Hi everybody, it's Here with the Birds, back with another Shadowlands video. In this video I'm going to walk you through a Mythic Necrotic Wake, just with a few pugs. Just been doing some mythics to test out builds for you guys and show you what it looks like when you're doing sort of the mythic content before we get our reset. And this build is our kind of melee paladin coupled together with some holy lights through Blessing of Virtue. So we're going to be doing a lot of Crusader Strikes to reset our Holy Shocks, just standard melee paladin things. Instead of taking Glimmer though, we're going to just work with Blessing of Virtue because first of all I'm in a pug, so I'm not sure what to expect, whether there's going to be people doing mechanics or taking a lot of damage, or doing interrupts, that kind of thing. These guys seem pretty solid, so maybe I didn't need to take Blessing of Virtue, but I think my recommendation for a lot of new paladins is to actually consider it, especially in content that's sort of difficult where you're under geared. I have 21% haste, which is actually quite high at this point in the expansion, and things feel really good at the 20% haste mark, guys, both for the ranged types of approaches, so casting lots of holy lights, and also for the melee glimmer build. And in this case I'm not running glimmer, but you can see just how fast I'm cooling down holy shocks in general. We've sped that video up, but it feels really good. So I just want to kind of comment on some of the things I'm thinking about. I'm taking Blessing of Virtue and I'm going to try to pair that together with some holy lights at different points while my holy shock is on CD, because there's a lot of really good throughput coming out of a virtued holy light. So you'll often see me cast holy light and then virtue a target right at the very end, and that provides just a great deal of throughput. Obviously we are running Kyrian for Divine Toll, which is just a really nice emergency button alongside some of our other tools. You can see it going off there. And that first boss went down fairly easily. It can be a problem if you don't kill the worms or if you don't have high enough DPS. He'll start thrashing around, everyone will be diseased, and it's a bit of a problem. So watch yourself there. These next couple of mobs we just end up blowing up really fast. Both this pack and the one that does a lot of absorption shields, especially on tanks or other players. So again, if you're running Necrotic Wake and you're finding it difficult, it's likely you just need to focus your burst damage into different parts. Maybe ask people to hold their CDs so they can smash some of these mobs. Priority-wise, I'm looking to keep my Holy Shock rolling as much as possible. You'll see here there's an example of using Holy Light and pressing Virtue right afterwards to top the whole group off as you're moving between packs. I'm also doing a reasonable amount of martyring on my tank as I have Holy Shock on CD. Holy Paladin in general only has one really good tool in my opinion for helping out with tank throughput, and that is Blessing of Sacrifice. All of our other throughput outside of Holy Light does not sustain tanks quite the way that other healing classes do. So we don't have really good rolling hots to put on them. We don't have amazing throughput through Soothing Mist, for example. We don't have meaty healing waves that we can just pump into our tanks. You can do Holy Lights, but it's still a short cast, even though I'm getting them off in about 2.1 seconds. It's still quite a long cast to be doing, especially if we're trying to do what most people probably ought to be aiming at, which is some kind of a glimmer version for dungeons. Part of the reason we say that is as the difficulty rises, the need for throughput goes up, and though I think Virtue is still a really good contender, you're not going to have any time to cast your Holy Lights when you're trying to smash out throughput and get the CD back on your Holy Shock. So just be aware that Holy Paladin in general is going to struggle just as a baseline, as a tank healer in Mythic Plus specifically. One thing that will help this is Beacon to some degree, but I think people overlook the fact that if you're playing Glimmer and you have Beacon on your tank, they are absorbing heals that you're sending in other people's direction. But when you're just directly healing the tank doesn't receive any extra healing. So a lot of dungeon footage, you'll see people are pumping the tank with flash heals to keep them up, that kind of a thing, while the rest of the group is fine, and then suddenly another member gets burst down, or there's an AoE pack, and you have to turn your attention to try to spot heal everybody else. You can see here he's going fairly low. We get some procs, so we're able to get him back up. But the question I have for people playing Glimmer is something like, if you get a big burst or somebody else in your group takes damage, how do you recover from that without something like Beacon of Virtue? It's really difficult. And you have a few cooldown buttons to press. You can reduce incoming damage taken, obviously with Aura. You can Blessing of Sacrifice people. But it doesn't fundamentally resolve the main issue, which is that if your tank's getting really slapped, you have to turn your attention to somebody else. You're not providing him with very much direct healing. Here we're going to try to add a little bit of damage on boss fights, either by pumping out our shocks into the boss, or just doing our normal rotation with Judgment. Lots of healing required for this fight, but again, I think Virtue is going to be just a godsend. You can see how much work it's getting done. Just tops everyone off. There's an instance of somebody that gets really injured, and I have to spend 2 or 3 global cooldowns to bring him back up. If the tank was getting slapped at the same time, there's no way to really double up on that attention. So you can be really GCD starved if you're playing the Glimmer build and you're just trying to get to people and you don't have time. So for those of you who are feeling that strain, Beacon of Virtue is a really good answer. You'll never run out of mana, especially as a melee build, and especially in dungeons once Prideful gets going. And call it a crutch or call it something necessary. I think people need to look more at Virtue in the Mythic content. If you're struggling, just take it. Don't worry about Glimmer. You can come back to Glimmer later when you get a bit more gear, when things are more sorted out. Perhaps once you get Shock Barrier. You can see here I think my computer lags a little bit, so we get into a bit of a difficult situation, but these are the sorts of circumstances that I'm talking about. If you're a Glimmer player, there's really no way to recover from that. And people will say, well, you should have prepared better. But a lot of pulls in Heavy Mythic Plus are like this. Either an enemy doing a big burst of damage, or someone makes one mistake, and we have to be prepared to use tools that will help to keep the group going. Adding damage is excellent, but the difference between a healer adding damage and one of your party members dying is really significant. You would far more have a tool that gives you access to saving someone's life or topping the group off in a few GCDs than you would being concerned about adding damage. This goes both for those of you who really despise the melee playstyle and just find it too cramped and too busy. So if you want to play ranged, I'd say just go for it. What does this look like ranged? I'll try to get some more footage for you guys, but essentially you just fill with your holy lights from range, and you take Bestow Faith, toss that together with Beacon of Virtue, and you pump out insane amount of healing. Keep your shock on CD, that sort of thing. You won't really run out of resources. You'll just want to work around your Virtue timings and burst 5 Holy Power into your Virtue windows to keep people topped. Holy Light does a lot of throughput all by itself, and in fact, it's a bit more safe on the tank side because you're going to be constantly casting that spell. Whereas with the Glimmer build or any melee Paladin, you see I made a mistake there not topping the tank in time. But in a melee Glimmer Paladin build, you're going to be Crusader striking and Judgmenting a lot, so those take up quite a few of your GCDs, and as a result, you are not really healing actually with those button presses. So, 2 Crusader strikes every 10 seconds is, well, it'd be more than that, but it's a lot of time. It's 30% of your 10-second window used up with a damage spell, which is excellent. Adding damage is good, but it is not providing that layer of healing going out. Whereas if you can get yourself to 20% haste and cast, 2.1 second holy lights, pretty decent throughput. And if you can toss that together with Beacon of Virtue, it actually is a pretty great prop up, as I was showing in some of my other videos, just doing dungeons all alone by itself. A little bit of Martyr there, probably not totally necessary, but I just like to be reminded of the throughput of it, and I'm planning to mess around with Untempered Virtue a little bit to see what kind of throughput action we can get. So getting a bit behind here, I'm just going to Holy Light into Virtue to pop off a big heal, get us stabilized. This guy does a lot of tank damage, so you can see how the party members are suffering, and Virtue just allows us to kind of pull around the corner. Tops both the Shaman and myself in 2 GCDs while attending to the tank. So you can talk all you want about people, not playing it correctly and all this stuff, but what really you need to talk to people about is what kind of tools are available if a person is struggling in a certain area. If they're just really having difficulty with all the GCDs, how can you resolve that while they still can play Paladin? The answer is not to tell them to go play Shaman or Holy Priest, it's to say, hey, here's actually what's in the kit. I think I make another mistake in this boss, I can't totally remember. Or it could be the last boss. So I got both mechanics, and I'm a little greedy there standing in the green fire, but we were close to the ledge. It worked out. I might have traded my bubble for that, but that's okay. It's just a flat mythic. He gets axed by the fixation, but the hunter and mage together are doing quite a lot of damage with lust, so worked out fairly well. We go up to the last boss, and then I think the mage doesn't get out of the swirls, and I wanted to bring this to your attention too, because sometimes there'll be mechanics either in Mythic Plus or in Raid in these situations where you need to start adjusting your gameplay in order to complete the content. So if you're bent on playing the Glimmer build, it depends entirely on you being in melee at all times without fail. Otherwise, the build doesn't work. So we have 2 ranged, a hunter and a mage, and the mage immediately gets destroyed by the first wave. So now we're going to have 1 less person to take the debuff. So there's more of a chance of somebody like myself in melee or others receiving this debuff, and it gets even worse when someone gets tossed down to do the mechanic below. So I start thinking to myself partway through, I think I'm going to need to move out to ranged to have a chance to bait the mechanic, either so that if it goes into melee, I can already be out of the circle and easily dispel the person when the third individual gets out, or I get the mechanic and I can freedom myself or dispel from range. So I start thinking about that, and here's a good example of it just working out almost immediately. We avoid that. It just takes a little bit of the pressure off of the fight. Obviously this is going to be a longer fight anyways because our mage is down, but I just want to show you how we can adjust with something like Virtue and Holy Light to make up for the problems that we're experiencing. Another important element of this fight is you get these patches of snow that are going to do damage and reduce your movement speed, so it's sort of important to have a fairly good spread when this mechanic is coming out. I dispelled too early and had to do it one more time. So it's a bit messy, but we're navigating it by using our CDs, just trying to recover, keep at range, bait this out. We can get in for a few more because the mechanic went out. I just bubble here just to be safe because I'm focused on the tanks. And again, look at Holy Light from range, guys, just picking everybody up with Virtue. Pretty incredible. We toss out our Trinket, grab that guy with a Dispel, and just try to keep topping people off while we run around. So I think it's always important, whether you're thinking in general about your raid comps or you're actually in the middle of a mythic dungeon and you have to adjust your gameplay, to know what tools your character has available to you and therefore what you can actually do. And I want part of what I'm doing with this channel to be a place to just give you data. You may come along and evaluate it and say, I do not want to play like that. That's doesn't make sense to me, or it's not meta, or the ideas he's talking about are not attractive. That's fine. I just want people to see some of the gameplay from all sides, ranged, melee, everything. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you guys again next time. Hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below. I'll try to get to them.